I'm so I'm about a month in to getting the TRX. Um, I've owned them. I've sold them. I've trained thousands of people on them. I've been through my best times and my worst times with the TRX. I wouldn't say my worst times. In fact, TRX suspension training was always the remedy. I highly urge you to get a suspension trainer, but I don't think you necessarily have to spend as much money as you do with the TRX. It was a greedy company. It never really stayed true to any sort of principle alma mater. It was never grounded in kind of a salt of the earth proselytizing propaganda that they should have stood behind, right? And there was just a lot of that soul selling in the era that it was coming up. But I had bought some $20, $30 Lifeline Fitness one year. I bought like 3 or 4 of those things, and I decided I'm giving them out to family members, And I don't know, a couple family members brought it up. Sometimes they were like, "What the fuck is this? Like, this is cheap." But all you really need, I mean, you could picture somebody back in the day, back in the Greco-Roman era, right, where they were working out with these hurdles and so forth, right? We're talking original Olympic Games, right? You could see how somebody would just use a really tough cord or sheet and be able to do all the training that you'd be able to do on rings or. So you don't need much. You don't need much. You just need a really good threaded fabric that's going to hold your body weight. And then you go through these time under tension isolation exercises, really where to start out with TRX. And I'll be doing a whole series on this very soon. I just got to the place where I'm able to train every single day. Usually it's part and parcel to my diet. I'm going to tell you folks, it doesn't matter what diet you're on, as long as you are doing a standalone diet. And I really wanted to give some resources. So I just did a live where I was just pointing out some of the places that you want to check, some of the resources to be able to back up some of these people, really like a vetting process of saying what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you some visual images. I'm going to give you some links that I'll be putting up later, but you can see it right on screen where to go, where to find these people, and how it sort of meshes together, right? Because it really is part of a holistic program that isn't rocket science. It isn't as complex as you might think. It's actually really easy to heal yourself and put this all together. And for the longest time, even as a high level professional fitness trainer, a lifestyle coach, certified nutritionist, certified in Pilates, certified in kettlebells, certified in TRX, multiple. I had well over 20 certifications from all different venues and avenues, passing tests and studying all of it and enjoying it and really being high on the information and spreading the information around and being paid really well and just being on fire for it, right? Anybody is susceptible to the hidden hand, right? Everybody is expected to supplicate and capitulate until you finally bow down to this strange dark half of authority, right? The authority, the internet of bodies, the ninth circle, Operation Gladio, Process Church. I mean, it goes on, and the rhetoric is boring, and they do get boring, and they keep changing names and places, and it really isn't about a specific name or a face. It's about the same playbook being used over and over and over again. Whatever you try to build through the salt of the earth, through this really healthy, purist application, they will be there to tear it down until you build such a solid fortress that you become unstoppable. They can't build up momentum. That's the whole thing. The people who steal ideas, the people who franchise on other people's ideas, they didn't build it, so they don't even know how to rebuild it or where it came from. They just do everything antithetical to you. Just don't open the door. Don't let them in. And this is that time. these eras from a celestial sense are marked by specific features. And we are in a time right now where autonomy and self-efficacy and autodidactic learning has become first. But you know what you're doing, right? And if you don't, look to those people who do, right? How to put together a nutrition plan, how easy it is, right? It doesn't matter what you do, but it does tailor to a certain seasonal type of eating, right? So in the wintertime, your body's naturally going to feel inclined to go toward more fats. Well, you can go on to a keto based diet and still lose weight and going into a standalone where you're almost eating entirely exclusively fat and you're going to be taking in more fat soluble vitamins. That makes sense, right? So that's why beef liver is beautiful. And then you may just need to bolster with some vitamin E, K2, right? I mean, everything else is pretty much there. You got your vitamin A, your copper, and your Heme iron in with the beef liver. You don't want to overdo it, right? But you could boost up on some vitamin Bs. But the point is, they're all there, right? And I wake up every day eating beef liver. This is the first time in 20 plus years where I actually feel like I'm anabolizing, where I'm not costing myself, where I'm actually building up fascia, where my body is. And I never thought in my 50s, going toward pushing 60, like I'll be 56 just coming up in months, that I would be able to do what I'm doing as if I'm like in my late 20s or early 30s. Like literally, I can tell you that I wasn't able to work out the way that I do now when I was in my late 20s. I had to reach a peak maturation where I was in my early 30s, where I'm actually training more consistently with more vigor and more focus. And a lot of that has to do with patternization and motor neuron memory, where my body remembers it. It remembers the angles, it remembers where I was. And it's almost like a drunk memory, right? But in a very positive way where you just pick up where you left off. So if you have ever pushed yourself in any way, even if it's just the most you've ever done is walking or walking up hills, right? Try to get yourself back into that and try to get into more time under tension type movements. But I'm going to tell you, and I'll lay this out, is that, there's plenty of videos on suspension training, on TRX that, all around, but I mean, specifically centered around YouTube. They even have their own channel, but it doesn't invite you in. It's not transparent, like it's not friendly, right? You feel like they're trying to sell you something. You feel like you're just being looked at as somebody who is being pushed to buy a product, right? So culturally, you really don't need to buy the TRX. The suspension trainer is something that I highly recommend, but you can buy knockoffs on Amazon. And for years, like even Reebok had one where it was just the simplest thing. They didn't have all the fancy buckles and cords and carabiners and so forth, right? And that's really what you're buying the TRX for, and the door wedges and so forth. But you're going to pay 180 bucks. The cheapest you'll see them out there is 130, but then they're going to try to gouge you on shipping and so forth. So when my uncle passed away, he hadn't opened the TRX up, and I'm trying to make this is my fortune. Like health is my wealth. Health is my fortune. I know how to use it. So, I mean, it's kind of cool because as a fat, out of shape, middle-aged man who's pretty much done, I still have the highly credentialed professional trainer that goes back 15 years still in my head. And as I go through the operation, right, and I'm coaching myself, I'm more equipped to be able to do those multifarious details where I can remind myself to tweak a certain exercise. The muscle memory is amazing, right? It really is. So the diet really plays into this very crucially, very specifically. So the summertime, obviously, you're going to be taking in more citrus, which expounds upon vitamin C, right? It expounds upon more magnesium. It expounds upon more vitamin Bs. So does that make sense? It's not that you're not focusing on this and you're not taking it. It's that you're focusing more on specific amino acid synergies and reactions at certain times of the year, right? And I would almost like break this down into really a basic 3 or to say gluconeogenesis, all protein standalone diets would be a transitory state. But if you're going to throw in a fourth, you might go toward where you're utilizing all three modalities, which would be gluconeogenesis, really would be last, right? It's the most unhealthy out of them all, but it's the toughest, it's the hardest, but it's also the most healing if you're doing it correctly. And your body will be able to assimilate these amino acids without you taking in separate amino acids. You just take in a full spectrum protein, and once you take in the synergizing nutrient with it, that's when the amino acids begin to go into their own competitive state, right? So high vitamin C, high B6, right? You want to be able to focus in on a more anabolic effect in the morning, obviously, and this ties directly into aromatic amino acids and how you're going to try to up your excitatory amino acids, your phenylalanine, your aromatic amino acids when you're slipping from melatonin, right, state over to cortisol driven state. And this really helps if you're up walking and you're producing your own cortisol, because now the vitamin C is being force fed into your system. Those bees are going to work, right? And if somebody has some issues like schizophrenia or other issues like that, my son, a dramatic change, the first big dramatic change that I've seen with him in his behavior, in his life, he finally did it. I just bought like a $6-7 of niacin. I'd been trying to rehash and study back up on orthomolecular science and nutrition. I was watching a lot of Dr. Thomas Levy, who's really championing and carrying the torch now. I did show in this video how I had a minor disappointment, right? And I don't know what the cause is of why Billy J. Saley is not cited. Heal with amino acids is cited in there, of course. Heal with amino acids and nutrients, right, is discussed in there. But more broadly, it's not specific. And, you know, this is somebody who is on the President's Council for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, really arguably came up with the name, was a big advocate for GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, early on. And your body produces its own GABA. Same with SAMI. Like, if you're taking in plenty of glutamine, we're talking about blood-brain barrier equalizing, right? An equilibrium, a homeostasis that one can reach when they have ample amounts of glutamine, pyridoxine like B6, B12, and magnesium. Your body will be able to make its own gamma aminobutyric acid, right? So this leads one to think, okay, if I really wanted to induce this state, well, I might take a very small portion of GABA, which would cause sort of a mimetic chain sequence where the body would then think that it's already making it if I go into that metabolic state first. And what would allow me to do that is if I'm rich in the nutrients, but I prompt it through a certain stress mechanism, right? So this is how crucial cortisol is. But the stress mechanism here would probably be a heightened state of alertness, right? And awareness, an amygdala reaction, a limbic system reaction, right? A high cortisol spike that could be set off and mediated through dietary mechanisms as well, like where people are reliving a certain trauma and they're doing this to themselves with their daily habits. They might intentionally get into an argument. They might feel really bad about eating something. They may be holding on to fat or weight in a certain area, right, around the gut, where past trauma, past stress is being held in, right? So this isn't like some metaphysical concept, but it really is. It's about energy, bioenergetics and energy work to start letting the stress in certain areas free so that we don't incur certain damage to our kidneys, our liver, brain issues are a big one right now, right? So sometimes you've got to actually go the other direction and stay away from glutamine. You know, glutamine is the most dominant amino acid in the human body. And the same holds true with glycine, right? I talk about that a little bit, where your blood serine levels being low really are markers for depression, right? So glycine being the simplest amino acid, if you taste glycine, it tastes like sugar, right? So you want to possibly take the enzymes that are going to also assist in breaking these down, right? So we have protease, amylase, lipase, right? Those are the basic ones, or protease, depends on how you want to pronounce it. It's a free world. You can pronounce it any fucking way you want. We're not in some collegiate study group, right? As long as you know what I'm talking about and you can look it up. But then you have other hybrid enzymes that could assist you based on whether or not you're eating more vegetable sources, right? Or meat sources, right? So there's a whole way of eating where you could have a transitionary state and then a liminal state for a macro cycle of an entire year, and you're actually coupling up training modalities with a certain nutrition protocol. So for the next 3 months, that's what I'll be doing. Is I'll be this month showing, I'll even show some before and afters of what happened when I did, more ketogenic diet this month. What happens when I slip into a GFG factor, right? I think is it FGF 21? Yeah. I digress, but it's like when you're secreting that particular hormone-like substance, right? That's going to cause you to spar protein and muscle mass, right? I got to get going. I got somebody calling me. Bless you and good luck. And we'll be talking about this a lot more soon.